I was prompted to put this video up because here in Australia, engineered stone or manufactured stone has been banned since July this year, 2024. So I've done this benchtop myself and it's made out of concrete. I did it 4 years ago and I thought, well, you know, here in Australia and maybe around the world, there might be people who've got a bit of skill who'd be interested in doing this as an alternative. So I'm just going to sort of talk through this as a one-off shot. It's not going to be a Spielberg production. But you can see that benchtop right through, and you've got the cooker, 900 cooker in the middle, and then another one at the end there. So the whole thing costs about under $400. And it was poured using floor leveler. I used a Dunlop, and I'll put some pictures up here to show that. And I got some notes, I'm just going to go through this. But to give you an idea, this was poured in situ. So where it is, that's where it was poured, and then it's never been moved. So obviously I had to form all this up. Underneath the dishy has to be plywood, and there has to be plywood under these. Make sure you've got good cabinets. So if you're using cabinets that have got a thin back on them, you're going to have to reinforce that a bit. Or maybe you shouldn't have picked those cabinets in the first place. You'll just need to reinforce them with a bit of timber at the back. These have got a solid back on them. They're good from Bunnings. They're a caboodle cabinet. If you're in Australia, you know what that is. So I've opened this up just so you can have a look underneath. So you can see the plywood under there. So I had to fit that in, and then the plywood comes out and finishes before the front edge. So that's about 45 mil from there to the front edge, and that's what, roughly half. If you look closely, you'll see there's a couple of screw holes in there as well. So the whole thing has got plywood underneath it. So the plywood starts here and runs around the back. So you obviously need to know the dimensions for whatever sink you're putting in. This is a Butler sink from IKEA, actually, about a quarter of the price of what you'd normally pay. Same with the tap, but you need to know the dimensions for all of this, and you need to form, because you need to form up for the whole thing. So to give you more of an idea, I sort of grabbed this. This has been in for 4 years. So it hasn't cracked or anything, and it's floor leveler. So it's quite a high MPa in strength, and it's got reinforcing in there as well. This is a little example of the form work that I used. So that's the exact same plywood that I used at the bottom underneath here. And it pulls up, so it comes out and finishes about 25 mil short from the front edge, or the side edges as well. So you need to cut that and put that in position. You need to make up all the formwork for this. And this is just a bit of a 80 mil by 42 or 45, whatever you want to call it. And I just tack that on like so. And you'll see these little screws. So those screws, I think they're an 8 gauge by 15. So you use those. Obviously I didn't have any of the drawers in, or the dishy, or the doors on. So I was able to put that formwork, and it sort of sits in like so, all the way along. One continuous, I'm just putting here as an example. And then you hold it in place by screwing through this and into the plywood that you've already put in place. So then you run that all the way around. You might have to put a drill and put a couple of screws. Because it's so thin, make sure you drill. So you can probably see there was a screw put in there at some point. Another one in there. So this is probably off an end, I'd say. It probably was in something like that. So once you've done that, then you go around with a little bit of filler, just a water-based filler, wipe it in, make sure you haven't got any gaps, and you haven't, because when you put the floor leveler in, it's just going to leak out on the floor. And you don't want that, because if it does, then it'll start slumping in the corner as well. Even if it's a slow drip, you might think, oh no, that'll be all right. And once you put the floor leveler in, that's it. You can't do it. So super careful, make sure you seal up any gaps that you've got around. You've got to put reinforcing under this. So if you've done any concreting before, I just sort of did a little drawing here. So there's your bench top. So this is looking from the side here, makes sense? So in there is reinforcing 1/3 up from the bottom. That's 40 mil. So roughly, I don't know, 13, 14 mil up from the bottom, as in above the plywood. So here's your little picture. There's your plywood. There's your Rio. And how are you going to keep it there? Well, I just use those electrical, little sort of U-shaped chairs. That's all I used. And I just nailed them in place. I'll throw up some pictures on this. Overhang from the front is about 45. And obviously the bench top is 600 deep. And then this whole thing is filled with floor leveler. That's how it works. So I'm just going to go through some of these steps with this for you. So you cut the ply, and it's roughly a 3 to 5 mil ply, less 25 mil. Less 25 mil because you want to finish up before it gets to the front edge. Makes sense? Front edge and also the sides as well. Then make up your separate formed edges. So here, make up these puppies and make sure that they come out and decide if you're going to, I'd put your screw there. So obviously you're going to overlap it this way and then butt it. It just has to be butted all the way through. Now, if you've got a normal sink that sits in there, then this edge will be one continuous all the way through. Same there onto the end. So here, be 1, 2, 3. That's all you need for formwork on that. And then you do the formwork for your sink that sits inside. However, because this is a butler sink, your formwork finishes here, and then you got 1, 2, 3 out there. You've also got a little bit of formwork for where this tap is going to sit. So you need to know the dimensions of this exactly. I just used a bit of conduit for this and put it in place. And I think I just used a bit of water-based glue just to glue it in. A bit of construction adhesive, that sort of stuff. So once that's in place, so this will all be sitting in here. Obviously, imagine that, and I'll show you some pictures of it. You need to then put your reinforcing in. Use those little chairs so you lift it up and you finish it up away from the edge. So you don't want it right up hard to the edge. You don't want to come and see a bit of metal poking out here. So use your common sense for that. Once again, if you don't have any skill and haven't done this before, don't do it. But, you can point your builder into this, video and they can go, oh yeah, this all makes sense, hopefully. Or drop me a line if you need more info on it. I used release agent. Now don't laugh, I just used this canola cooking spray. And all I did is once it was all formed out and the Rio was in, just before I poured, I just put that in, make sure it covered all the way along. The reason I do this is because the first one I didn't do that. And this was the first one I did. And you might just be able to see there's a bit of a rough how's your mother in there. So that's why I do that. I would highly suggest that you do a little sample, even just make up a little box and just do a test run. If you don't like concrete, obviously don't do this. Or if you do say, well, I do like concrete, but I don't want that grey look, well, then you can use an oxide and you can tint it down. But as you see, I use concrete because I wanted to match the whole vibe of the house, which is like that industrial look. So as I said, it's about, $400 all up. And it's a Dunlop floor leveler. I mixed a bit of sand in with mine, but you don't have to. The sand has to be washed, make sure there's no salt in it. What else? What are we up to? So once you've done that, and you've got it all, and you're sure you've got all the gaps sealed, there's nothing, everything's set, ready to go, your Rio's in place, then you mix up your floor leveler. And your floor leveler, you mix it up with a drill and sort of a mixer like so, and do it very slowly. I use a flexi bucket and make sure you've got plenty of it. The last thing you want to do is get all this poured and go, oh geez, I'm a little bit short. So that's why you can actually throw a bit of sand in there as well, but not too much. Read the instructions as it says. Most floor levelers go off within a couple of hours. So once you've got that, you've got drop sheets down in place, all your formwork's done, your Rio's in. I start pouring from the back, so you're not leaning over wet. Pour it from the back, get to along to about, say, to here, and then start coming back. Pour it to get to here, and then I'd start pouring along, say, this section here, and then up into here. Let that settle. Now, when you mix this, you mix it on a slow speed, no air bubbles, no lumps, and make sure that it's smooth and that it flows. It's not like concrete. It's not hard and gluggy and sort of clumpy, like holding, if you clamp it in your fist, you get a shape. No, it's floor leveler. It finds its own level. So it has to be able to run and it has to be smooth, no air bubbles. Once you've got that roughly, I got a bit of wire and I just went along and just push all the way along, which is a standard they do in most slabs anyway when they pour. And it helps get rid of any air bubbles that you've got, because if you've got an air bubble in there, you're going to have a big hole up in there. You might go, well, I don't mind that, but it may compromise the strength of it. So you go around, all the way around, and then you can have a look and go, oh, hang on, that's a little low, put a bit more in. When you're finishing up, you should find that that floor leveler is just starting to bleed over the edge like that. And you can use a trowel or a scraper to sort of pull it out, and have a good look. If you do get a couple of leaks, maybe have something on hand, like a bit of construction adhesive or a bit of tape or something. You can sort of tape up any holes that you've got. You shouldn't though. You've got about 10 minutes to get all of that done, which you may go, geez, but you should be able to do that. Then you just leave it. Don't be tempted, because once it starts skinning over, then you shouldn't be touching it, because you'll get a weird finish to it. And you just let it dry. Now, most of them start going off, and within, most of them say you can tread on them within 2 hours. Obviously, it depends on your humidity. The lower your humidity and the warmer the day is, the quicker it's going to go off. But that sort of gives you an idea. I'm also going to show you another little video I've got of the one I did in the laundry, which is pretty cool as well. You can see how it flows in and takes up any shape. I'm checking my notes, so I've covered everything. Yeah, leave it. I remove the screws. So once you're ready, you can take the screws out, and you might, like where this butts in the corner, this will come over like there. So obviously you've got it like a screw there. So you take all that out. Don't pull it out this way. Try, because you've done that releasing on it, just try and give it a little tap, like this way, tap, tap, tap. Even just tap it with your thumb. I wouldn't go hitting it with a hammer too hard, just to sort of encourage it to move. And the moment you see it start move, slide and take it away. Don't grab it and go and pull it off this way. That's how you can take off chunks. But I would suggest maybe 3 hours roughly. That's what I did. And the reason I did that was it was still, obviously it was starting to go off, but then I got a bit of fine abrasive, and I just took the arris off these edges, because when you take the formwork off, it can be rather sharp. So top and bottom, and also in the corners like that, and it finishes up beautifully. Then you've obviously got to let it dry. Look, the longer you can leave it, at least a day, even a couple of days would be great. I wouldn't go sort of, leaning on it too much, but you can take all the formwork off and just leave it. Then you can start fitting your sink and your tap and all of that into place. However, before you do that, you need to seal it. So I used just something really simple. Here in Australia, we use like a cromlin, like a stone shield in a low sheen, and that's what this has. Now, understand this has had 4 years, and I'm pretty brutal with benchtops. Not brutal, I'm careful, but I don't slam them around. I'm not, like if I take something off here, I'll put it straight on there. It doesn't worry me the size, because once again, concrete industrial field, that's what I'm looking for. So 3, possibly 4 coats of something similar to this. And then every couple of years, that's been 4 years and I haven't touched it. It's great. But you could then sort of give it a bit of a clean up and do it again, just to sort of tart it up a bit. Hope this has been helpful for you, and I think it's a great alternative, particularly if you mix a bit of oxide in and get a couple of colours with it. And it's super cheap. Imagine getting a stone benchtop in concrete for around $400, and I'd say 1 day's labour, if you know what you're doing. Wish you all the best. So I also want to give you a bit of an idea of this this bench top in here. This is in the laundry, obviously. So 2 split, that's the way I like it. You can just do 1. Probably see under here, so you can see the sink. This one doesn't drop in, it sits underneath. And that was all formed up. And look at the beautiful edge on that. So it came up really well. And you probably see a lot easier underneath here. So there it is there, and there's the plywood underneath. Right through. And also, because it's done in situ, this corrugation, it flows right up into the corner. How cool is that? Same thing here, just leave holes for the tap. Oh, I couldn't find a cool tap, so I made that out of plumbing fittings. They're just compression fittings, a bit of 15mm cold drawn copper pipe. If you're interested, same over here, you can see flows all the way around. And there it is under there, right through.